Hello, welcome back to Talk Seagulls, and we are in a different setting. Louis, where are we?
We are at Earth and Stars.
I tried so hard not to say Earth and Wind and Fire. I'm so sorry, right? I love this place, by the way. It's a great spot.
It's unbelievable.
But trying not to say Earth, Wind and Fire was actually quite difficult. But do you know what? All that's said and done with the venue, make sure you do come down here, by the way. It is a nice place, and they've welcomed us very, very late on. I literally put a story on Instagram, couple hours before, and yeah. To their credit, I got a lot of responses, and thank you to everyone that did reach out. But yeah, it was Earth and Stars that reached out, and I thought, do you know what, great place, and yeah, welcomed us with open arms. Got a couple of coffees here.
Yep.
I'm ready to get into it, and we've got a little Guess Who throwback here as well, the 18-19 season.
Unbelievable.
That's great.
Some real throwback names on this. I'll put a shot over. You can see some of the faces, and
mate, it's some proper throwbacks. But we need to talk about now.
We do,
because I mean, that Chelsea game wasn't great, as we know. It's quite obvious. There's been a lot of talking points on social media, because I don't want to just completely review the game as we do on there. We don't always want to just go straight over the game. But actually, the talking points to take away from this is Fabian Hürzeler and Adam Webster. There's question marks over the tactics. There's question marks over what we're doing. To an extent, I get it. But what are you thinking at the minute? Is it like a... it's only our first loss so far this season. It's important to remember. But yeah, of course, there are going to be naturally a couple of maybe warning signs for us. Yeah,
I think warning signs, I think it's probably the way to look at it, because obviously you can't wet the bed. It's our first loss of the season. We've had, I wouldn't even say it's like ridiculous start, but it's definitely a lot better than we would probably have expected. Having a new manager just come in, didn't know the system or the squad before, the summer, to come in and to start the way he has, and the fact that we were undefeated until Chelsea. There was only two other teams at that point that were also undefeated, which is quite something. So I don't think there's any need to start getting all upset and saying, oh, he's got it wrong, he's done all this. He's going to have games where it's a learning curve. Essentially, it's a learning curve for all the players. It's a learning curve for him. So yeah, like I said, I don't think there's any need to be anxious or anything like that, but at the same time you also have to be very aware of what's happened in the game and why things went wrong.
Yeah, I think just to pick you up on it, because my only thing is this season is, do we have time to be naive? Because we've spent 200 million, right? And I'm not saying this is a general thing, I'm just putting this out there as a talking point. We spent 200 million pounds, right? And I think the general ambition from top to bottom, fans alike, think, let's go for Europe again this season. It's quite obvious that's the aim. We wouldn't have gone and signed the players we signed this season for the fees we've put into them if we didn't think we could get Europe again. And quite rightly so, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So do we have time to be, trial, error? There's going to be problems along the way. Of course there are. But also, I think it doesn't take that much of a genius maybe to say going to Chelsea away with a high line like we did with the probably personnel we had in place probably wasn't the best move. It was quite, as some people would say, suicidal for us to go there and do exactly that. Do you agree with it? Do you think we can afford to just make mistakes this season? Is there time to, be the old Brighton and not have that massive expectation whilst also trying to push on for the top end of the Premier League?
I think you've definitely got, you don't want to make mistakes, that's pretty obvious. However, I think everyone's got some leeway to make some mistakes, and I think that is also going to come with, like we say, everyone's sort of learning the system. The personnel, we don't know what happened behind the scenes, whether, with Van Hecker, he would have expected to start.
Someone Putney Bridge before the game on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. We expected Van Hecker to be the starting centre-back, so yeah, there was no prior news on his absence, so we can only assume that it was a very last-minute change, that something happened. Maybe it was in the warm-up, maybe... We just don't know, right?
Yeah.
So for Webster to come in, obviously, and then the system that we had, we're playing two centre-backs who are, let's be honest, not the most mobile. They're not the quickest by any stretch of the imagination. And you've got Chelsea's front four who are rapid, right? Yeah. I mean, there's no denying it. They absolutely ran us ragged. But it's the risk versus reward. I feel like unless you are one of the elite teams, you're looking at the likes of the Cities and the Liverpools, you're going to have to take some risks in order to then step above and then, beat some of these teams that you might not necessarily expect to beat. So I feel like the risks that you have to take, obviously they've got to be calculated, but we knew, and I think everyone knows looking from the outside, that Chelsea are very weak defensively. You know, their playing out from the back has been very suspect for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, you look at their defence and you saw from the 2 goals that we created was by pressing. It was by pressing super high,
yeah.
and it caused defensive errors. And that in itself is showing that plan to that side of it, it worked. It was the right idea.
Yeah.
However, if you're looking at the defensive personnel of it, all they had to do, play one ball up to Jackson, he knocks the ball down to Palmer, you've got Madueke going around the outside. That's it. That's all they had to do. You know, we got Estepinian, who doesn't look fully fit yet, playing on that left-hand side. Kadioglu, who, I mean, to be fair,
he's still breaking in. Kadioglu,
still breaking in.
He's not quite ready yet.
I wouldn't say. I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? Because
defensively,
defensively,
I think that's where he struggled. I think that his going forward actually was quite good. His passing ability is pretty decent. His
passing ability is very good,
and I thought that was a good sign. You know, we haven't really seen Ferdy, have we yet? So I wouldn't want to slate him too much or anything like that. But yeah, I think defensively probably dived in a bit early. It's really easy to say that when he's coming up against someone like Jadon Sancho, Cole Palmer, who are one of the best, you know, dribblers in the league, in the world at the moment. So, you know, you have to take it with a massive pinch of salt. At the end of the day, Chelsea have not only spent a lot of money to Brighton, but they've spent a lot of money in general. That team is no joke, right? They've spent about £1 billion to get this. Yeah, exactly. And it has been a bit of a case of throwing as much as they physically can at that football team until something actually starts to click. And now finally, to Maresca's credit, it has done. But still, at times in that game, as you said, I think, we did have a couple of chances first half. Probably it was one of the weirdest first halves you'll ever have. 6 goals by 45 minutes is ridiculous.
I honestly thought it was going to finish like a foot champ scoreline. Yeah. Like, genuinely would look ridiculous.
The Spurs game could be crazy, by the way. we'll be majority on the halfway line for this.
Oh, yeah. Both teams just there.
Yeah, just there. Whoever knocks it over and got the quickest winger will win. Mintes. But yeah, it did seem a bit like that to Brighton in the sense of, and this was my biggest concern. Maybe I was a little bit premature to say drop the high line straight away, because quite rightly you say, yes, it does lead to goals. High up, you have to have that press as well, right? Because that is what Hürzeler's style is. But at the same time, at this level, against that calibre of players, with probably, I wouldn't say the calibre of players we got, but with the profiles of players we got, that's the only concerning bit for me. Is I don't think even Lewis Dunk and Adam Webster, in their own admissions, would probably say they're the quickest centre-backs on the turn. Nor would they probably argue that they're most technically gifted when it comes to playing against someone like Cole Palmer, who's by far one of the most informed players in the world right now.
Oh, easily.
So I think that bit was kind of obvious. And that's the only thing that does worry me against not just Chelsea, but against, you know, teams that have intelligent players that are going to be quick enough to get around them, that a simple over-the-top pass that happened on the countless occasions, it really could have been 6, 7, 8, 9 against Chelsea, and that's actually not an exaggeration either, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, I think the strategy, you could see what the idea was very clearly, and on those times that we did actually make the offside trap succeed, obviously it gets quite frustrating for them, I can imagine, but the times when all they had to do was just sit off that tiny bit extra, and again with the pace they've got in behind people like Madueke, once they're actually gone,
passes like Enzo as well. Like, you know, if you've got someone like Caicedo, as we know, is a great sort of, you know, a great talent, you have to say it. And Enzo's probably one of the better passers in the league in terms of lofted passes and getting over the top of the team. To me, that was just thinking, what were we thinking? I don't know. I think even if I'm not a manager, right? I don't think anyone in that crowd was a manager, but everyone around you saying exactly the same thing. I was at Stamford Bridge, and that whole away end was saying, it's the line's too high. It just was. And this is my question to you, right? I understand that it's going to cause some controversy and people are going to say it's too early to say this, but do you think there's a reasonable amount of reward for the risk we're preparing with the players we've got? You can say Tottenham as a good example. The other night against Manchester United, their high line worked really well, and they completely dominated that game and deserved the win. But they've got players like Mickey van der Ven, who's
rapid,
one of the fastest defenders I've ever seen.
Unbelievable. I've never seen someone run exactly that quick. Ridiculous.
Yes, we can say Van Hecke could have made a difference, and I'm sure he probably would have done. But would he have made that much of a difference? I'm not so convinced. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the personnel. I think the personnel is the main issue that we had at this point. like you say, you look at the way Spurs played that high line against United, where you've got players like Mickey van der Ven, who is one of the quickest players probably in the whole league.
Yeah.
But you look at the personnel that we had, obviously Van Hecke in a 1v1 situation, such a good defender. Brilliant. We know that.
Of course. So is Webster, by the way, and so is Dunk.
Yeah, I mean, in those 1v1 situations, that's very much what they're about. But what Chelsea did so well is they countered the ability to play the ball in behind, because they know that our backline, or certainly the two central defenders, are very, very slow. And they exploited that. So they countered the tactics. So all they had to do was break that press, essentially. They play one knockdown and then in behind. And that's all they had to do. And it was rinse and repeat. So once they sort of figured that side of it out, you saw in the second half there was a change of personnel. Igor came on.
Yeah.
Personally, I would have probably started Igor. I know obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but just looking at the way he played in that second half, he was very composed. It allowed Dunk to be back on his natural right-hand side. It just made a bit more sense. And obviously the tactics themselves changed in that second half. Chelsea changed their approach as well. We set off a lot more. But it just, I think a lot of that will come down to the naivety of it all. Like the fact that, we sort of went into that game knowing that they were very weak playing out from the back. So you almost had to force them long, where you'd think the aerial duels, like Dunk, for example, would win most of those aerial balls. Nicholas Jackson, to his credit, very good in the air and did very, very well that day.
Yeah.
And he probably could have had a couple of goals as well.
Yeah, he should have done. So this is the question then. So, with all of that considered, I mean, obviously I know that not every team is going to have the sort of ability that Chelsea do going forward, but a lot of teams do. It has to be said, probably half the league have quality going forward now. The league is not a joke, right?
No, the league's never been a joke.
I think the Premier League is arguably probably one of the strongest it's been this season. I think in recent years, I think if you were to look from top to mid-table alone, you couldn't differentiate between who's going to finish 6th and who's going to finish 10th. There's not many teams. You'd say Newcastle and Villa, right, as being one of the two sort of the best of the rest, right? But then even then you've got Chelsea, you've got United, then you've got obviously City, Liverpool, Spurs. I think, again, they're all in and around the same sort of spot. The traditional Big Six never finishes 6th like that. It never happens.
No.
So that's always going to be a bit of a jumble. But then even still, you've got like the likes of Wolves who, have looked here and there every now and then. Then there's always a surprise that comes out sort of midway through the season. So, I think even when you look down the leagues, I think Ipswich have made a pretty good account of themselves so far this season. I think to their credit, McKenna, as we knew, as we wanted him for a reason. So the league is going to be really, really difficult. So when I look at it, I think, well, it was obvious against Forest, wasn't it? I think we were very high. And again, to their credit, I think it was it Gibbs White, and very, very patient with how they played. And that simple pass through was always going to cut through us. And I think it only takes that, and that was with Van Hecke playing, by the way. I know Webster, so look who got the hate and who didn't. I'm not saying I want hate for Van Hecke by any stretch, but you can see the sort of the scapegoats in this. But again, it doesn't take a genius to see that wasn't going to work for me. And I'm just thinking, Fabian Hürzeler has got a really, really good opportunity now to, prove now that he can change it. Like we saw with De Zerbi. I think when De Zerbi first come in, the results weren't exactly the best. We were struggling a little bit. You could see what he was trying to do, but we're thinking, my God, what are we trying to play so deep for? This is crazy. We're playing with the goalkeeper literally waiting for someone to come and pressure him. And it worked for a period of time. I think then people started to work out, Brighton want you to press. If you just don't do it and you sit back, then they'll get frustrated and they don't know what to do with themselves. That was De Zerbi's tactics, when they finally got. But my fear is, hopefully, and I'm wrong, Hürzeler's style has already been sort of not worked out as such, but there's already the first stumbling block, and we're only in October nearly. How does he now adapt this? How does he then go, okay, look, I've got to take my hat off to him and go, this is the time where Dunk, say Webster's fit this time. So say Dunk and Webster start again, right? Obviously, we can't do that again, because if we do, Spurs will. They've quite capably, with Maddison, with Son, if he's fit, with Brennan Johnson, the form he's in, can quite capably get through that back line quite capably.
And Dom Solanke as well.
And Solanke is a great finisher. So now he's got the opportunity to say, look, we'll do a bit of a blend of both, right? And that has to come, right? It has to. Because, I mean, Liverpool did it, didn't they, with the sort of high pressing, whilst also being quite defensively sound. In fact, very defensively sound when Van Dijk first came in. And that's what now has to, we want to see now. What is the, not even plan B, but what's the adaptation to realising this is the tactic? It's a very naive one. We're in the Premier League. How can I do it? What do you think? Do you agree with what I'm trying to say here?
No, I do get what you're trying to say. I think the main, like you said, the main issue is that kind of naivety and the fact that maybe teams have, I wouldn't say figured this out, but they know that we've got, quite slow players towards the back line and that we play a very high line. And I think this is an adjustment that is going to have to be made, obviously. And the strategy isn't going to work against every single team that we come up against. I think the adjustment just has to be even just a little bit more depth. There's nothing wrong with just paying teams a bit more respect. I mean, you see the way that teams do it to us. Like, you won't often see teams that play a low block every single game of the season and try and play counter-attacking football. But when they come to Brighton,
they know that that's the way through.
They know that's the way through because they know that we will overcommit and then there's space in behind, right? So that's what teams seem to do every single time they come to the Amex or they play against us, because they know that we will try and be brave and try and get beyond them. So they will sit as deep as possible, have a couple of fast players up front and hit us on the counter. And it's been the undoing for probably the last three managers. I'd say, since Potter came in, again, because he was very much possession style, creep forward, try and pass the ball into the net, by which point you've got almost every single player in their half.
Yeah.
There was a game against United, I think, where they pretty much sat back the whole game and they just stuck Rashford up front. They just hoofed the ball long to Rashford and he's gone.
I remember.
And then he sat Ben White on the floor. And that was it. And that's, even since the Potter days, it's just been the exact same thing. So teams have learnt to adapt to the way that we play, which is a credit to them. But also, in the same manner, we have to learn how to. I guess it's a way of trying to bait them in.
This is it. So it's like, this is it. This is what I'm trying to say, right? And I don't want to discredit Hürzeler because he's done a great job here. The results here have been fantastic so far this season. But it's the first punch in the face, right? It's the first hit back. And it's not just a hit back in result, because it's the first time we lost. It's by no means no exaggeration. But to suggest that this happened in the games previous is not unreasonable. I mean, it was quite clear against Forest, if we kept doing that, we were going to concede at some point, and so on and so forth, the games that's just gone. So I think it didn't take a genius to see that was going to happen again. So my question now is, what does Hürzeler do with the players we've got available to us? Because I want to assume that JP's not going to be okay, because I know what we're like. If we then say, Van Hecke will be fit next time, and then he's injured for the next 3 months.
It's a minor knock, and then it ends up being out until the new year. So
let's assume that he's not okay for a bit. And, it is Adam Webster. I will get onto the Adam Webster situation in a minute, or it is Igor. How does that then change? Because we know that Igor, Webster, Dunk, as defenders, are fantastic defenders. We know that Dunk's one of the best defenders we've had at this club, if ever. We know that Van Hecke has been our best defender in the last 2 years. And we know that Adam Webster's a very, very, very capable, as he proved in that recovery challenge, clearing it off the line against Nicholas Jackson. We know that he's very good last ditch, right? And that's what these sort of defenders are, right? And I sort of have to accept that they are. As much as we're very good ball players, they're very, very good last ditch challengers. So maybe if we did just drop that line back a little bit, surely, by that logic, that doesn't happen again. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're trying to say. I think, just paying. I think it might even just be just paying teams a little bit more respect. Like, I'm not saying that he's being disrespectful in playing these super high lines. I just feel like we have to respect that teams will try and counter what we're doing. So we have to counter their counter. And I get this is why they're paying Hürzeler the big bucks to be the manager, because obviously this is his job. He's the one that's going to figure this out. I think in terms of the personnel, if we're assuming that Van Hecke isn't fit, I feel like as good as Baleba is with those marauding runs forward, I almost think having him as that extra bit of protection for the back two, I guess.
I wouldn't want to waste Baleba, but I get what you mean.
But
I think
that's the one thing that I've noticed, is that because Baleba's not shy of getting stuck in, and getting those tackles in. And when we have that slightly deeper block, he's the one that breaks up the play and transitions it forward.
Baleba like Caicedo on drugs to me.
He's
literally Caicedo on drugs.
He's a nutter.
He's so good defensively, and then he's so good going forward. He's honestly come on leaps and bounds, Carlos.
He's going to be such an important player for us going forward. So I think managing him in terms of his minutes is going to be really, really key.
Yeah.
I think when O'Reilly comes back, that's going to be really big for us, because at least we can sort of give them all a chance to have a bit of extra breathing time. I think Vifa, I see a lot of potential with Vifa. I feel like just giving him I think maybe he was misprofiled to begin with. I think we talked about this before.
I'm so glad you said this.
Yeah.
The exact word I was going to bring up to you.
Yeah.
It's not just Vifa. It's Dunk, it's Van Hecker, it's Webster. You know, maybe it is just a case of play them to their strengths, and then we might see the result. I mean, I'm not saying you can't just profile players correctly every single time, because football doesn't work like that. You have to be able to adapt to situations. But actually, when you look at the game against Chelsea, the game against Forest, you could argue that quite a few players were misprofiled in them games, and that's what led to the situations that's happened. So actually, if you were to just play Baleba to his strengths, if you were to play maybe Vifa as that anchor, like he was, but with a bit more protection around him, I think he was the anchor, but I don't think he had anywhere near enough players that are on the same wavelength around him. No. I think he received the ball so deep. And I remember Caicedo used to do it here. He received it so deep, but Caicedo was sort of experienced and good enough to know what he had to do next.
And he had the trust as well.
He had the trust. And also I think because we were quite well established with McAllister at the time, that, you know, if you were to imagine it on FIFA, the chemistry was perfect between the two of them. I think they were ready to pass the ball and receive the ball from pretty much any angle. Obviously, Vifa's not had a pre-season. He's not been quite ready yet. He's not even settled into the team yet. I wouldn't really say. I don't think he's anywhere near the sort of player we'll see of him by the end of the season.
No, of course not. I mean, if you saw any of his games last year when he was playing at Feyenoord, like the role he took up was very, very different. It was almost like the sort of role that we sort of see from Baleba now, where he would pick up the ball really deep, just sort of creep it forward, and then look to distribute.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that yet, because obviously it's a very different system to what Feyenoord play. And like you say, he didn't have a pre-season. He hasn't had a chance to really find his feet and adapt, and he hasn't maybe necessarily had the most consistent minutes.
No, he hasn't.
Either. And the situations that he's come into off the bench, again, very, very different. So you've got to obviously adapt to what's happening around you. But I think once he's really given a chance, maybe even given a chance, but once he's had a few more minutes and he's kind of understood the players around him, how everyone else plays, and got used to everything, we'll see a very, very different player. And I think he will be very, very key. Like you say, we've got Baleba, we've got O'Reilly, we've got Vifa, who are all playing that same sort of role.
Yeah,
again, you can't
number 8, number 6. I think
exactly.
The difference is now is we probably don't have enough. As I say, I think it has to change, because it probably, you know, I think if the Chelsea game wasn't enough to bully us into changing, I don't know what will be, to be honest. If we can concede that many chances, I think we'll be lucky to even be in and around the European places by the end of the season, if we do that week in, week out. But hopefully that is a wake up call, maybe.
A wake up call is probably
a wake up call to maybe profiling the players a little bit better and understanding what we've got at our hands, because what we've got on our hands is a fantastic individual squad, right? We've got probably one of the strongest individual squads I've ever seen in my lifetime. If you were to just look at player profiles, you would say brilliant, 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 potential, all round. But I don't feel like we're maybe getting the best out of each and every single one of them yet. And just to be positive, actually, the one, as you said rightly, is Carlos Baleba. He has been come on leaps and bounds, and I say that with utmost respect to him, because how he's come on from only last season. I mean, he's only 20, isn't he? He's really young, and he looks like he's been playing for years. He really does.
I say that is something to give De Zerbi credit for, because I think a lot of managers might have seen the situation that we had with holding midfield, where, you know, we were trying to basically put Billy Gilmour and Pascal Gross as like holding midfielders, right?
Yeah.
And Carlos Baleba, like we talked about this before, the fact that he came over from Lille and he'd had 7 first team appearances.
Yeah.
All the rest of it had been youth football.
Yeah.
And to just come in and immediately have to start in the hardest league in the world.
Yeah. Big fee as well we paid.
Big fee. And it's an impossible task for any young kid, unless you are literally like a generational player. Which, I mean,
He might be.
We just don't know. But to expect that of a kid just come straight out like that is ridiculous. So I think the fact that he was managed in that sense, given the minutes in moderation, to then just sort of just gradually find his feet. We saw the same with Buonanotte. The fact that, you know, he was given time to find his feet and adapt and see where he would fit in best. And we realise now that he's definitely more of a 10 than playing out on the right wing, which is where he sort of started his career with Rosario. So, yeah, just giving him that time. And I think now that he's established himself, he's been given the confidence, because, you know, if he'd had so many minutes last year and he'd had a few setbacks through, you know, making mistakes and stuff like that, it might have completely shattered his confidence.
Yeah.
But now he's come in and he's had the time to just sort of settle in and figure out his own style and figure out, you know, how he can play and his limitations. Now he knows that.
Yeah.
He's got the confidence to go and push on. You see that with when the times he takes the ball and he starts progressing it, he looks like an absolute tank. And you know, I saw on Twitter as well, pretty much every game so far, you look at the opposition teams and like the fans of the opposition teams, the one player that stands out every single game is Carlos Baleba.
Yeah.
He runs midfields ragged.
He does.
He absolutely does. And I remember it was one of the games it was, and he literally said, I think it was Ipswich, and they said that he literally made all three of their midfielders look like they were playing youth football.
Yeah,
like
they said
just
that about
couldn't keep
Chelsea. I think a Chelsea fan said that about them as
He
well.
literally said like he was on a different planet.
Yeah.
Genuinely a different planet. And I think we have to be careful that obviously we don't try and overuse him because of how well he's playing at the moment. But at the same time, he's going to be such a key player.
Yeah, he is. I think what I like about Carlos is there's no proper flaws in his game. He's not got like as you said, limitations. I don't think he has too many of them at all. I think the main limitation you probably notice with Baleba is probably his naivety at times. But he's young, right? And he's given away a couple of penalties, hasn't he? And he maybe puts himself in there. I don't actually think the penalties have been too much to judge on his part.
No, I think that both those penalties were soft. I think the one against Forest again, it was very much like a sort of shoulder to shoulder situation.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of interpretation.
It's one of them though where you say it's just Baleba. You know, it's one thing he'll have to learn is just don't put your body into him in the box.
I mean, he's clearly a lot stronger than Callum Hudson-Odoi, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously the one against Chelsea, it's soft, but you then look at what happened in the second half. And we talked about this with Mitoma getting tackled by Gusto. It was almost the exact same thing. And all we ask is either they're both penalties or neither of them are.
Yeah.
You just need a bit of consistency. That's a whole other conversation to have.
No, I agree.
But you said about the naivety. Naivety is definitely something that Carlos I can see improving over time. And obviously that comes with experience. And in that same vein, I think we've got to give that to Hürzeler. Because obviously naivety is something for him, and just the lack of being in experience of playing in the Premier League and managing in the Premier League. It's a whole different kettle of fish. And that's no disrespect to the Bundesliga or German football in general, but you come into playing in England where not everyone is going to play a massively high line. Not everyone is going to play the way that we see in Germany.
Yeah.
It's very, very different to how teams play in England. So for him, it's just, I think, obviously that things will have to change. I think he'll be the first to admit that. And there's no issue, there's no fault on him or anyone else. As long as he makes that change.
This is all I'm really asking for, to be honest. It's just to not do that again.
Yeah, but and in the same vein, we also have to afford him the fact that he is still a very young manager, and in terms of experience compared to, let's say, everyone else in the league, he's definitely not got the same number of years. But there's clearly a reason why the club have brought him in, and we can see from the football that we've started playing. The start of this season, like we said, this is probably the best start we've had in a long time to start the season. And then sure, there are points that we've dropped, but you know, if we were perfect, we'd be top of the league.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't have dropped a single point and we would have destroyed every single person we come up against. But if you look at the teams that we've played so far, you know, other than, you know, not trying to be disrespectful, but you think Forest and Ipswich, arguably the two games that we shouldn't have dropped points, but we did. And then we've played, was it four of the big six?
Yeah.
Already. And the fact that he's got as many points as he has and got to that point, you know, and this is the first stumbling block we've had, considering all the other teams that we've played. I think it's still pretty good. And obviously, like you say, adaptations will need to be made, but you can't write him off.
No, I'm not writing him off. Not writing him off. Just to completely say that. But I think it's just one of them. It's you want the adaptations. I think probably what we've got used to at Brighton is really, really good moments. We've gotten used to really, really good football. I think under De Zerbi, and to De Zerbi's credit, we were one of the best build-up sides in the world.
Easily. We got the recognition from Pep Guardiola.
In De Zerbi's era, I think that 6 months of 23, 24, whatever it was, 22, 23 even, that was some of the best football I've genuinely ever seen. I think some of the half times that I would come away and just be like, that is one of the best halves of football I've ever seen. I think that Liverpool game, do you remember the 3-0?
Oh my,
where Solly scored
that. Was so good.
I remember going in at half time, I said, that was faultless. And I think that the amount of times that we said that during that period, it's so hard to overlook. And I think that our minds have almost been warped into this perception of perfection under Brighton at the moment. And I think, it is easy to say. But yeah, probably the adaptations is profile correctly. I think maybe just accept what we got. And what we've got is, as I said, a very good group of players. Just the final thing on Carlos is, I'm really intrigued to see what he's like sort of towards the end of the season. As you say, manages minutes correctly. Potentially, O'Reilly coming back. I'd love to see when João Pedro's fit, because I think we've only seen so little of him, and we've seen moments like that already. Shout out to Mazzala Designs, by the way, it's brilliant. But we've seen moments like that already where, the talisman, we didn't even have him against Chelsea. So there is going to be a lot of players returning, and there's going to be a lot of points to factor in. But the final sort of thing I wanted to mention, I say final, there's probably going to be something else I think of, but the Adam Webster hate, and this has been pretty big, hasn't it, on social media? I saw some crazy tweets that I'm not even going to say on the show because it doesn't even bother wasting my breath on it, to be fair. But there were some stupid things that I read from our fans towards him, and I think it's important to remember not just he's a human being, which is doesn't take rocket science. Is it? Oh my God, can you believe it? A footballer's a human, believe it or not. Local lad, I think he's been here for 5-6 years now. One of the first times he broke the bank for a player, really, that we're progressively looking at. I think we put a lot of trust in him when we did, from Bristol City. And he wasn't proven at that point. I think he's done a good job. I think, yes, he's been very mistake prone, but he'll admit that. I think he's not a naive person. I don't think he's a delusional person. I think he would probably be the first to come out and say, I was not very good. I made a mistake.
He did on his Instagram.
He did say that. And I think that's completely fine. I saw a really good analogy of it, and it's like, why hate the person that's playing? I remember particularly under Gaetan Bong when he was playing in the Premier League, and he got so much slander every single week. And I'm thinking, he don't want to be that bad. Gaetan Bong, Adam Webster, does not wake up in the morning, get chosen for the first 11 and think, right, do you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to just completely sabotage and have an awful game, and I'm going to give the ball straight to Cole Palmer. That's what I'm going to do today. And he doesn't wake up thinking that. He thinks, I'm going to put in my best performance I physically can for this football club because I love this club. I think it's clear that Webster loves this club. He would have moved on in the summer. He would have moved on when he was fifth choice. He would have moved on when he wasn't good enough for us at that point. He didn't. And even when he got to the point of being called for an England call-up, not even that long ago, by the way, a couple of years, he was one of our best centre-backs. We're saying Webster for England, and you'd deserve it more than Dunk, I remember being said. And all that time's passed, 5 years has gone. And yes, okay, he has had a lot of mistakes in him, but also he's had a lot of really, really good moments for us. He's been a great goal-scoring centre-back as well in history for us as well. And all that time's passed. He doesn't wake up thinking, oh, do you know what? I'm going to have a right stinker today. He thinks he's going to have a good game. And okay, he doesn't have a great game, but he's not picked himself to be in the team. I saw someone saying, well, why is he making himself available for selection? I was thinking, so you think Webster's picked himself to go into the team, and you're then going to slate Webster for having a bad game? Are you you've got to be on another level of delusion to think that someone's picked themselves for a game and wouldn't want to make themselves available for a game because he thinks that he might make a mistake?
Yeah, no. I mean, this whole situation, I feel like is quite. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and to put this into perspective, for us, for example, we've been to the pre-Premier League days, we've been to the Championship days. I've been to some League One games, right? We were right down at the very, right down in the slums of the Football League, right? It was a very, very different time. And I think now the expectation, certainly in the modern Premier League era, is that we have to be flawless. Like, we've got these expectations that we are going to be a European team. Like, it's almost you think it is going to happen regardless. But you look at, like you say, these players are human. And I think the comments directed towards Webster, frankly, it's disgusting.
Well, yeah, but this is the thing. They think the way of counteracting the fact that Webster's had a rubbish game. In fact, do you know what? He didn't even have that bad a game.
No, he didn't. And if you look at the goal line clearance he made, genuinely was unbelievable.
Yeah.
To recover that. And again,
Exactly.
the situation that sort of led up to that moment, you know, the ball gets played over the top. Sure, maybe Bart doesn't need to come flying out for it, but
Yeah.
Jackson takes a good touch, goes round him, then goes to the finish, but Webster's there. And arguably, I don't think that he was any worse generally than Dunk. It just happened to be that one
And
error
Verbruggen, to be
led
honest.
to the goal. And again,
None of them were that good. But what can you... This is the point. None of them were that good. But
No.
then everyone goes on Twitter.
It's
and
just the
because
scapegoat.
And because it's the scapegoat, the way they think that they're going to counteract the fact that he's had a bad game is to just give him a load of abuse. Because that's going to make it better. How does that make any sense?
Thing is, yeah, he held his hand up, and I think the pylon is completely unnecessary because he knows that wasn't his best game by any stretch of the imagination. He admitted it himself.
Yeah.
So the need for any it's just no need for any other comments.
You can slate a mistake, you don't have to abuse. Simple as that.
Exactly. It's really that simple. And to be honest, it's never gonna, like, from his side of things as well, it's never gonna make him want to play more. Like, you know, you're just gonna get into his head, and you're just gonna, if anything, anytime he then plays from then on, all he's going to be thinking about is any abuse he might get.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't blame him for deleting the social media, to be honest,
I could
because
be on social media
it
as a
was
player.
just unnecessary, and like it doesn't help anybody. Like, sure, if you want to express your feelings about the game, this is what we're doing here. We're expressing our feelings about the game, but you can go about
Quite
it
respectfully.
Exactly. You can go about it in a way that isn't completely attacking
Yeah.
a single individual. And the reason why there was such a pile-on, I believe, on Webster was because of that mistake that led to the goal. But there were 3 other goals in that game, right? There was a penalty, and no one is piling on Baleba for that foul, which I guess arguably isn't a foul. No one's piling on Estepinian for bringing down Palmer on the counter-attack, which led to that free kick,
on
which he then
halfway line,
scored.
which took about 20 yards in front of it.
Regardless, it's a very good goal, and I think Estepinian, well, kind of had to at that point, didn't he,
Yeah.
to drag him down, and he was lucky not to get a red card, to be honest.
Not been exactly great since returning.
Exactly.
Why? Because he's been injured about 3 times.
Precisely, and Webster's also
Doesn't
been
take a
injured a lot.
genius, you know
It
what I mean?
doesn't take a genius, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. The scapegoat is always being made as the same player. You know, Baleba gives away the penalty. Estepinian drags down Palmer, which leads to the free kick. Sure, Webster plays that poor back pass, and then you get one other goal, which was the whole defensive structure kind of got a bit miscued, and there was a nice pass in behind, and then Palmer slots it near post pass for Bruggen.
Yeah.
No one's getting it for Bruggen for not protecting his
Well, it's
near
a near
post.
post. Yeah, exactly. So normally it would be a Verbruggen hate. Instead, it's ended up on Webster. Why? I don't actually know.
Exactly. And I think they all know that it wasn't their best game by their own admissions.
Yeah.
They know it wasn't the game that they wanted to play, and no one wants to play badly, like you say. So any kind of pile-on just isn't necessary at all. And I think nobody benefits from it. Not a single person. Like, they know what they did wasn't their best, and they know that they need to improve. You just don't need to get onto them. And like some of the comments I saw, I'm not going to repeat them because some of them were genuinely like vile.
Yeah.
I thought,
But then
imagine if that was you. Imagine if you're the person on the receiving end of comments like that.
Yeah.
How is that actually going to make you
I
feel?
get it anyway. But I mean, it doesn't stop me doing this. But I mean, it does make you wonder why you do it sometimes. And you just like, what's the point? You know what I mean? You put something out and then you see it and you're like, why? For what? You don't know me. You know what I mean? And Webster's probably that amplified, right? So I just don't, I don't really understand it. And as I say, I'm not telling fans not to have an opinion, because I saw someone having a go at me saying, oh, well, Ryan, don't take the moral high ground and you can't have this opinion and blah, 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 blah. Because, they'll find a moment where I've slated a player, or I've slated the management against Chelsea, right? You can quite rightly have a go at tactical problems, right? That's how it works. That's football. Everyone has an opinion. God, you listen to Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher at the best of times, right? But no one has abuse. And I think that's where the line goes. I remember it with Mopé. Do you remember in the lockdown? I think I remember him walking off the pitch.
After he missed the penalty and walked off the pitch.
Because of how much abuse he got.
Yeah, exactly. He knew that in his head, like, if he missed that penalty, and his confidence was already on the floor at that point. I remember this. And then he gets that and he misses the penalty, and all of a sudden, he's like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. And it's just horrible. Like, because
don't want that for anybody.
No. And I hope Webster, if he does see this, he might see this. Adam, if you do see it, don't listen to it because it's just stupid. And I don't think anyone that does it is an actual Brighton fan. That's what I would say.
I don't think it definitely doesn't represent the majority of the fan base because like we are all human. And I think a lot of it is reactionary. It's in the moment.
Yeah.
You end up saying things that you necessarily don't mean.
I lose my head at games every week.
But like, this is the thing. We all get frustrated. We all get angry. I mean, I'm sure the players will fucking go at each other sometimes. It happens. But we have to realise these players are all human. They know what they've done wrong. There's only so much you can tell them. And like Adam said, right, in his Instagram story, and it was in his Instagram post, he said, it's all fun and games saying these things from the stands. He's on the pitch. He's the one that has to actually do the job. And he's done it for a number of years. And there's a reason, clearly, that we've kept him at the club. Yeah. The fact that he knows the players, he knows the system.
He's taken a leadership role. Well, and actually, I think every time he's come into, that captaincy role in the cup games, I think he's always stepped up well.
Exactly.
I don't really get it, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's covered. I think we've covered it well. I think hopefully he does see it and he does appreciate it. We'll give him a little tag in the comments. If you are in the comments, do a little nice message for not just Webster, but a bit of positivity. It's bring a bit of positivity back because I feel like it's gone a little bit negative. Okay, I think we've just about covered everything, Louis, haven't we?
I think so.
We missed anything? I don't think we have. Spurs, just a little word from you. What do you think? Just a little thing.
Yeah. Again, this is where
we like that.
No, we can't. No, sure, but we have to loop back again.
Don't start Webster.
This thing about naivety. We look at the profile of the players that we're up against. Brennan Johnson in red hot form.
Yeah,
absolutely red hot form. You've got Son Heung-min, who is unbelievable. Genuinely unbelievable footballer who can create something from nowhere.
If he's fit, though, it might not be fit yet.
Dom Solanke, again, I've seen the role that he's taken up. It's very much like a Kane role, like sort of dropping in and picking up the ball and driving it from deep. Yeah. It's a very, very dangerous thing. We've got to pay a lot of respect to them. Yeah. And obviously with the back line that they've got Van der Ven, they've got Romero. They've got a very, very strong defensive unit. And Vicario, who is, for me, probably one of the better keepers in the league. I think it was last year. He was genuinely almost unbeatable. Yeah, like some of the saves he pulled off, my mind was blown. Yeah. So again, it's just paying those respects. We know what's in front of us. We have to give them the respect. Like they will give us the respect. Yeah. They're probably going to sit off the way that a lot of teams do against us, and it's just that adaptability. But I think, I think to be honest, as long as we pay the respect. I feel like there's definitely a result. I mean, I feel like there's a result against every team that we come up against because we like you said, we have the quality. Yeah. It's just about how it comes together as a team. Yeah, agree. I think that's pretty much where we're at the moment. Pretty much sums up where we're at before the Chelsea game, probably, and after the Chelsea game, really. Not too surprised that we did lose in the way we did because of, the tactics that we're implementing at the moment. But we'll see. A lot of time for adaptations. There's a lot of time left in the season. It is only the end of September just. But Louis, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I can give you a handshake this time. Oh. I can reach. Make sure you come down to Earth and Stars as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to be hosted here. It's a nice little spot. It's really cozy up here. I might get some food afterwards. Apparently they do some really good food, I've been told. So we've got to be having some of that. But yeah, make sure you come down. Thank you to everyone that's been watching. Make sure you like and comment. If you are on YouTube, subscribe as well. This will be on Spotify. So if you are a Spotify listener, give us a review because we haven't really got any reviews. So I want to, you know what? You can say whatever you want in the reviews. Be honest. Cool. So say something about Ryan's height. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know.
Or don't. But yeah, we'll see you next time. And goodbye.